Hi everyone, welcome. In this video, let's keep talking about this attachment underneath against the start point. In the previous video, we talked about white's response from the 3-3 side, preserving the corner. In this video, let's talk about the hane from the outside. As a recap, we talked about there are two directions for this attachment underneath, right? For each start point, here or here. So if you play here, that means black wants to come into the left side, or at least reduce white's potential influence on the left side. If you play here, then it means the upper side is more important for black. So keep that in mind, and we'll see what happens with some of these variations. And also, there are four possible responses for whites, right? A, B, C, and D. We'll cover A and B. C and D I'll mention very briefly at the very end, because C and D are a little slow, and you're giving black the choice of whether moving into the corner or coming to the left side. But if you play at A and B, it's really white's choice. So if you're white in this situation after black's attachment, it's probably better for you to make the decision at A or B. So C and D are not wrong, but they give black the choice. So it's worse in terms of decision making for white. So white hane from the outside. That basically means black can take the corner and white will get some kind of a wall or influence on the outside. So the most standard Joseki from the hane here is black moving into the 3-3 point. White connects here, very solid shape. And black needs to play this small knight's move on the second line, which is usually a good move according to AI. We see this pattern in many situations where black might be able to play this bend or even this jump. It doesn't really work here, but AI prefers the small knight's move because it's so solid. It's very, very solid. There's just no weakness in this shape itself, right? I think that's why AI likes it. But of course, the downside to this is that it's on the second line. White will probably play something like this to keep black down, right? And now what happens is that black will push once. White cannot block, right? So beginner mistake would be to block here, and this cutting point is really harsh because number 10 is cut off. And this one stone here is relatively vulnerable. So you would extend once, and white is less afraid of this cut, right? So it makes a big difference in terms of the shape. So you have to extend here, and the correct move for black actually is to play this exchange, this hane, and connect. A bit surprising, at least to me, right? Because normally you don't play this exchange. As we'll see in a 3-3 invasion Joseki, we used to believe it's a different context, right? But this move itself, right, this hane and connection is not necessary in that situation, but here it's necessary. Why? And of course, this kind of solidifies white's wall. But why does black want to make this exchange? And the answer is, it has to do with life and death and the shape on the corner, right? So let's say if black takes sente, and now this move is really, really harsh. This is really threatening to kill the corner. So black will have to play a move here, right? So it's either this shape or this shape for black. And of course, this is better for black, right? Because if white gets to play this, then this is a super solid shape on the outside. I would say just as solid as the other variation. So of course, black would not want to play this, and that's why black is better off just playing this exchange, because white is going to get really strong anyway because of this move at b15 by white. And it will reduce black's corner and threaten to kill the corner. So no good choices for black, really. I don't think this favors black necessarily. It's just that b15 by white is simply too harsh. And this is our Joseki. It's actually pretty even, turns out. The corner's territory is pretty good. And of course, there's this cutting point sometime down the line, but you may not want to trigger it right now. And black has sente. Right? So this is our basic shape. What are some of the variations? One variation, of course, is this bend. Again, it's an amateur mistake. I'm sure some dumb player might think this is a good move, right? You might be thinking something like this. This would have been okay, right? The corner is pretty solid. White gets a wall. So this would have been okay. But according to AI, white has this move that kind of fully encloses black, right? So it makes a difference. If you play something like this, Now the upper side is still half open, right? Black can still play something like this and threaten to connect on the second line. But it makes difference when white plays this move. And what happens now is that this is probably the best black can do, right? If you play something like this, you're going to be enclosed. White has the upper side sealed off, so it does make a big difference. If you play something like this, it's still going to get sealed off, right? And now the best thing black can do is to push and cut. But this cut is not as harsh as the cuts we saw earlier. Right? Compare this to this, right? So basically number 9 here is on the second line, whereas the pattern we just saw, number 9 is here on the third line, D17. So what's the difference? The difference is that number 9 here puts much more pressure on 10 and 12 here, right? Whereas this stone right here doesn't put as much pressure. So that's the subtle difference. I think it is a very subtle difference. You might still feel good about black cutting here, but it's a subtle difference that AI says it's actually much better for white this way, right? Just so you know. But if you prefer this bend somehow, try it out. But just know that the correct move is right here. You still have the push and cut sometime down the line, and number 9 is better situated here. Whereas this move, you're going to get enclosed completely by this move, which is a really good move, because intuitively you might want to play this hane. But this small knights move, really effective in enclosing black. So I think that's all you need to know about number 9 for now. What are some of the other moves? I mentioned this briefly. It doesn't work, right? Never leave this push and 2 cutting points here, right? 2 cutting points. And now white will just cut from one side. You have to capture, and the corner is gone. So this is not okay for black. Even this is not great. But of course, in this situation, I would go with a previous variation. I would take the corner as white. So number 9, never a good move. This is the correct move. This is viable, not as good. So any other moves for white in this situation? You can try this. This is not good, right? It's like being really harsh, but black already has the corner. Black is going to live. So white is better off playing here because it limits black's option of coming out from the upper side. But if you play here, now black will just hane here. You have to extend. You don't have the double hane. You can't press black down, right? White is just going to die here. And if it's something like this, then black is out on the third line. And number 8 here is harsh, good for points, but relatively useless because black is already alive and coming out on the third line. So that's why number 8 right here on the second line is not viable in this situation. So you see the subtle differences, right? Because when you occupy the corner here, this is a harsh move. This is a legitimate move. But when you give black the corner, it doesn't really work because black can just escape, right? So these are the differences you need to see as you go through these Josekis. Anything else, right? You might consider this move, right? This will just go back to a 3-3 Joseki, right? This is a classic 3-3 Joseki. It's probably one of the first you'll learn. But the problem with this is that we said the left side is important, right? That's why black came to number 5 from the left side. And now this is, again, pretty good for destroying the left side because it's still half open. Black still has moves here. Black can invade depending on the circumstances. And white's influence is greatly reduced by black's crawling here. So that's why normally, unless black invaded from the wrong direction, you don't play a number 8 here. Right? Otherwise, if the left is important, this is a good way for black to destroy white's influence on the left side. So that's number 8. It's basically just this one move. But what's interesting is that number 7 can also be here. Right? It's pretty rare. You don't see a lot of this, but it's an interesting move that's potentially complicated. I'll just show you a few variations. If you're interested, you can use AI or other research tools to figure out some of the variations. But it's an interesting move. It's pretty resilient, right? So first of all, you can't just take number 7, right? It's always a bait, right? This would not be good for white because you're sacrificing the start points here. And black has a really strong shape. So this is not okay for white. You can't just take the bait. Beginner mistake. So what are some of the viable moves? The correct move, the best move according to AI is just connect here, right? Very peaceful, very, very solid. And now black has a choice, right? If black comes into the corner, then we'll kind of go back to the previous variation, right? Something like this. Let's just go back. But black has other options, right? Black might want to play something like this. Now, again, it's white's choice. If you want to seal off the left side, you still can, right? Number 10, you seal off the left side, it'll be something like this. And it's fine for both sides. White probably owes a move here on the outside, but this is okay for both sides. Or if the upper side somehow is important, where white doesn't mind black coming into the left side, this is also okay, right? This is also the shape. And black can just come in, and of course white can put some pressure on this group. Right? It's not completely alive yet. So if you get to this point, it's actually still white's choice. And this will not be a good move, right? So number 7 might be insisting on coming to the left side, because number 6 is saying, go to the corner, and number 7 is like, I still want to come out to the left side here on the second line. But number 9 may not be a good move, because white can just take the corner like this. Now the corner is very solid, white is already alive, very strong shape, and these 4 stones are not doing much. You still need to move on the outside like this, depending on how much space you have on the left side. So this may not be a good way for black to play, because this is simply too small, and you're again giving away the corner. White has such a solid shape and good position. So that's why after number 8, the best thing for black to do is still to take the corner. But things can potentially get really complicated, because intuitively, if you're a Q player, down player, you might think about this move, right? You might think that black will have to live on the second line, right? This is even better. But the problem with this is that it's not the same as one of the variations we saw earlier. When we saw this, right, black doesn't have this move, because white can connect here. There's nothing on the corner for black to play, to cut, and now black can only live on the second line. And this is going to be painful, right? But this is different, because white also has a weakness. So both cutting points are weak. You can't just cut here. This is inconsistent. You're not getting anything. And black is on the third line. It's really about whether black comes out on the second line or the third line. If it gets out on the third line, it's okay, right? Black is okay in this situation. But if you take care of this move, then again, black will come out. Or this will kind of go back, right? Black will play Hane here, white can enclose, right? So white encloses black, or if white chooses this, then black will come out. So this will go back to one of the previous variations we just saw. So the harsh move for white, of course, is right here, and this will get complicated. So black has to cut here, and this will get a little complicated, right? You can't just crawl here on the second line. This is too painful, right? Never crawl on the second line like this. So you have to cut as black. And what does white do? White will tighten the liberties here, and also extending its own liberties on the corner, because you can't really kill number 11, right? It's not going to happen. It's not viable to Atari from the outside. And now actually what black needs to do is crawl here. And if white takes number 11, this is actually going to be okay for black, right? Because again, black comes out on the third line, even though the corner is gone. And of course, if black keeps crawling like this, then black will be able to kill the corner, right? So that's why this is actually not okay for white. Actually, even after white connects here, black can still cut. And this is potentially really interesting. So again, the strongest move by white is right here. If black simply escapes, then their number 11 will die. And this will kind of go back to one of the situations we saw, where it's not okay for black. But black has a really, really good move. And you can calculate for a little bit to see if you can find it, because this really comes down to a capture race. So if you're ready, I'll show you the really good move. And that's right here, this clamping move on the second line. So what it does is that if you don't play this move, number 11 will be killed immediately. But what this does is that it protects number 11. It sacrifices number 13. But white has to respond, right? Only 2 liberties left. You have to respond. And black will keep playing this move, right? Now 11 and 15 are safe. There's no way white can enclose these 2 stones. And number 15 is also sente. White must play here, right? And now it's very important for black to not get greedy, right? You might want to play this. You think this is still sente. You're threatening to kill white. But actually, no. If white Ataris from this side, this way black is going to die. You can't come in. Seems like white is very short on liberties, but this shape, if you get to this shape, then black is about to lose, right, at this point. So number 17 cannot be there. You have to come out. You have to come out. And this is actually good for black. Can you see why? Because these two stones are not going to die anytime soon. Right? If it's something like this, black can either move out. Right? This cut is really harsh, and white must take care of this stone first. And how does black win this race to capture? Right? So first of all, you have to prevent white from making two real eyes. You have to kill it. And then what do? Big question. Because if you're not careful, if you're thinking like you're just Atari and close the liberties, you're going to be short. Black is short. But is black short in this situation? Again, if you're unsure about this, take a moment, pause the video to calculate. If you're ready, I'll show you the correct move. And that is right here. You have to exhaust white's liberties from the other side. That's really, really important. Right? You cannot play this. This is too tempting because this is the easiest way to get to a liberty. But in this situation, it's a really special situation. You have to play from the left side here. And of course, if white occupies its own liberties, black is going to win very easily. And if white plays from the outside, black can play this Atari, right? It's kind of a cut. And that's what makes this pattern so special. And you can throw in here, right? Not occupying your own liberty here at D19, right? If you play here, it basically means your liberty is reduced from 4 to 3. So you have to play from the outside liberties first. And this way, even after this capture, black is going to win, right? Black is going to win this. Or if white captures, doesn't make a whole lot of sense, black can still win, right? Like this. So it's a race to capture, relatively rare in these Joseki lectures, but it happens, and you have to know how to deal with this. And what about this, right? So if it's something like this, then it's still going to be good for black, right? It's simply too strong on the outside, and the corner is simply too small. So it's not viable for white. So if white lives this way, then black will just play on the outside. And this will be a good fight for black, because black has the upper side and the left side as potential bases, and white is kind of floating up here. So it'll be a fight, but black can most likely handle it. So that's where it gets really complicated with this cut. And of course, white has this move, not as good, because white still owes a move on the inside to live. Right? You still need a move. Otherwise, black can still potentially destroy all the eye space here. So still going to be a very tough fight for white. One thing to watch out, right? Number 10 seems peaceful, but after black cuts at number 13, super good move. It's going to get really, really complicated. So that's why not recommended for beginners or key players to try this. Could get really complicated, but you have to know the moves. If you play this as black, if you play this Hane as black, you have to know the good moves I just showed you. Otherwise, just come into the 3-3 points. So that's it about number 6, I think. Do we have other moves for black? This one will kind of go back to the one I showed you, right? It's the equivalent of this crosscut, which doesn't work. Really doesn't work. Once again, this is the sequence. White will just Atari twice, block from one side. Now black has to choose, right? If it's either way, it's not going to be good for black. If you choose this way, this is even worse for black. So it's not viable, right? This Hane is not viable. What about this crosscut? Again, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. This time I think you can just extend here. Should be okay, right? Again, you're enclosed, and number 7 is not doing anything on the outside. Or you can play this, right? This is potentially harsher, right? Again, number 7 will be cut off, and it's not worth it for black to play this way because you can live so much more comfortably by just moving into the 3-3 point without this cut. So that's why it doesn't work for black. So lastly, let me talk about this and this very briefly. As I mentioned before, if you play here, you're giving black the choice of moving out to the left side here, as we saw in the previous video. It's a viable variation. Or black can come into the corner, and this is potentially problematic because, as we said, the left side is more important, and this is a good way for black to destroy white's influence on the left side. If you play this double Hane, this will get to another 3-3 Joseki, basically the equivalent of a 3-3 Joseki. And the conclusion there is that this shape for black is very strong, and again, black is really destroying the left side. So that's why number 6, right, it's too passive. We're giving black the choice. And in this situation, either way, black is going to destroy the left side. And this is going to be similar. Black can still crawl here, right? Black still has the option of crawling here and coming to the left side. Of course, if black comes in the 3-3 point, we'll go back to one of the variations we saw in this video. But you're giving black the choice of encroaching on the left side. So that's it for this attachment underneath. Relatively straightforward, but there are variations where it gets complicated. So make sure you remember the most basic variations and use them in games. As for the more complicated variations, you don't have to remember them, just know that they exist. And if you need help, right, in games, in reviews, just come back to this video or look up some other resources and figure it out. As always, if you have any questions or confusion, please let me know in the comment section below. Best of luck, and thank you for watching.